Right now, funny shit, he's back and he's got a great game. I'm so excited to talk to him. Jeff Foxworthy, welcome back.
Thank you so much. You look great.
Thanks. I just
The
woke up
little
like
hair
this.
I threw on this morning.
You know, it's so funny. I curled only the front, the back. I shoved it in a secret ponytail. It's because no one will see it.
Yeah.
Do you see it?
See, now let me ask you, do you ever do this? Because I years ago, I used to do like a country countdown show. And so I would interview people, but it was radio. And so the first question I would ask everybody is, where are you and what are you wearing? Because I know in my lifetime, I've done so many radio interviews where you're like in a hotel room and you set the clock for 5 minutes before you're on the air. And so your hair looks like it's been in a blender. And,
Yes.
and I'm like, so I would say, what are you wearing? And you got to tell the truth because I've done 10 million radio interviews in my underwear.
Love it.
Yeah.
Everyone has.
Yes. But the people driving in their car listening don't imagine you sitting in a hotel bed in your underwear.
You're right.
You know.
You're right. They don't understand that they're doing every 5 minutes. They're doing a different city over and over and over for 2 hours. Well, I'm in my pajamas if that helps you out.
Yeah, we only see you from like there we go, girl.
Right.
I love that.
I've got hair hanging off my sock. Let's talk about
like
this.
dog hair, cat hair,
Totally,
kids'
dog
hair. Yeah, there we
I'm
go.
a mess. I'm a mess. This game, we're addicted to games, and this one sounds awesome. It's called Relative Insanity. The game is out now. I love this line. You can pick your nose, but you can't pick your family. Tell me about this game.
Okay, so, all right. First of all, I think any game that makes you laugh. Because I try to do this, Jenny, even when I go on stage, I try to remember every single person in the audience is going through a struggle. Every human being is going through a struggle. We all just try to conceal it, and it may be financial, emotional, physical. Somebody you love may be in a jacked up mess, but everybody's going through a struggle. And I don't
100%.
Yeah, laughter doesn't make the struggle go away, but it kind of recharges your battery to go deal with it again.
Yeah, it gives you a reprieve from the pain.
Exactly. Boom. That's the best way to put it. And so I'm real big on games and laughter. I'm real big on family. So like every Thanksgiving, we have like 30 relatives that come to our farm. And every night we're sitting around playing games. So last year at Thanksgiving, my girls who are now in their 20s and, you know, all the cousins and all, they're playing Cards Against Humanity, which is hilarious. But it's filthy. I'm a comic. You know, there's things in there that I go, what does that mean? But they're playing it at the dining room table. And I walked over and I said, listen, your aunt and uncle are here. Your grandmother's here. Y'all got to go downstairs. You cannot play this in front of.
Exactly.
And so I was the comic in me was thinking, all right, there's got to be a way to do this where it's still funny, but your aunt and uncle can play. And so like with my stand-up, I've never been like really dirty, but I've been suggestive. And so I thought, all right, so I sat down, I took note cards, I wrote 400 punchlines, just things that sounded funny. No setup, no premise, just punchlines. Like, I have mold in my crawl space. You know, I don't even know what that means, but it's, you know.
It sounds funny.
It sounds funny.
Totally.
And then I thought, all right, what does every human being have in common? We all have families, and everybody's family is nuts. Everybody's family's nuts. And so I wrote 100 setups just based on relatives. So it might be when my cousin walked in with her new baby, my granny blurted out blank. And it's the easiest game in the world to play. You have 7 punchlines. You pick the one you think's going to get the biggest laugh, and you throw it down.
Oh, that's great.
So I got some here if you want to play.
Let's do it.
And it's very difficult.
I can tell you already with Barbara Walters. Can I share one?
Sure, please.
She said whenever a baby would come and be introduced to her, she would always she thinks that all babies are ugly. So she would just, for every baby, say, now that's a baby. Because it didn't give away whether it was ugly or not.
You know what my wife and I call them? Hi, babies. Because when you see them, that's all you say. Hi, baby. so that's our little code word for ugly babies. And then we'll get in the car and go, ooh, that was a hi, baby.
Now I'm going to be doing that for the rest of every time I see a baby. It's going to be hi, baby, and now that's a baby. But let's play your game. All right. It's called Relative Insanity.
And this is how easy it is. All right. So the person, the reader, we go, right before we walked down the aisle, Daddy leaned over to me and whispered blank. right before we walked out down the aisle. And so you usually play with 7 punchlines, so I'll read the 7 punchlines.
Okay,
right before
cool.
we walked down the aisle, Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "I'm not wearing any underwear." Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "You were conceived in a car wash." Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "You really should wear underwear with those shorts." Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "The greatest night of my life included a handicap tub and a bottle of Mr. Bubble."
Those are amazing.
Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "Look what I found in my navel."
Oh my God. Oh
And the
my
last
God.
one, oh, you'll love this one.
Yeah.
This is just by chance. Right before we walked down the aisle, Daddy leaned over to me and whispered, "I've always thought your baby was ugly." So,
that is freaking genius. So then I would just pick one, and then the next person would go.
So the person reading just picks one. Here's another one. I will never forget the day my grandpa said to me, "Beano saved my marriage." I'll never forget the day Grandpa said, "My only regrets are my job, my children, and my marriage." I'll never forget the day Grandpa said to me, "I'll see you in hell." Grandpa said to me, "You have a crusty in your left nostril." Grandpa said to me, "If ignorance is bliss, you must be very, very happy."
Oh my God.
So it's just punchlines. Grandpa said, "You might want to zip your pants up." And so
it's amazing how they all work.
Yeah. And so with all the combinations, you play it forever.
Oh, this is fun. How long has this game been out?
It just came. Like I said, I sat down and wrote it myself. I did it on note cards, and then I actually had my family play it. I was like, okay, here's the setups, here's the punchlines. Everybody takes, and I filmed them. And then when I took it to Play Monster, they were like, usually we have like research teams that take a game and figure out how to make it better. They said, we went over and over this. This is just hilarious the way it is.
Oh my God.
And if a game makes you laugh, you'll play it forever.
Exactly. And this is so great because it's not like you needed the actual money. You just found something that was missing in the game world and you made it.
Well, see, like this is for me with like the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. The reason it was so successful was you didn't have to turn it off when your aunt and uncle walked in. You could leave it on. They would laugh at it too. And so I always went for the biggest audience instead of, I've never been the New York or LA hip and cool guy, but I've been to all 50 states and most people aren't hip and cool. When you're home, you're not hip and cool at home, are you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Part of me would love to do the Blue Collar Comedy Tour again, but then part of me goes, maybe it wouldn't be as good and I wouldn't want to taint it, Because Ron, when Ron's by himself, he's a lot dirtier than the other three. And I said, Ron, here's the deal with the Blue Collar thing is people bring their 15-year-old and they bring their grandmother. And so, and he's like, well, I can't write 30 minutes of clean material. And I'm like, you can. You've done it before. Okay, I'm too lazy to write 13 minutes of clean material. So.
Why do you seem like, how do I put this in a PC way? You're not clinically depressed.
I don't know. People ask me that. It's weird the things that stick with you. And I remember being about 10 years old and seeing. Do you know who Richard Petty is?
Of course.
Yeah.
I know
Okay.
Richard Petty is.
So I was like 10 years old, and I remember seeing an interview with Richard Petty, and they said, "What's the coolest thing you've learned?" He said, "Don't outgrow your raisins." And so for people that aren't from the South, that means don't outgrow the way you grew up. And so, I had a great childhood, but we had a dirt yard. I came from a, less than middle class kind of. And so the way I look at it, I make a fabulous living doing something I would have done for free. I still love doing what I do. My dad left when I was little, and so I decided when I was little, because if that happens to you and you're a kid, you feel like you weren't worth sticking around for. Right. And so I decided when I was young, my kids are never going to feel that. So even though I had a job that took me on the road, I would fly home. I wouldn't get home till 2 a.m, but I'd get up at 6 and I'd take my kids to school, and so.
I love that. So you still had your core trauma, which was kind of like an abandonment feeling.
Yes.
And had to work on that feeling of I am worthy.
Yeah.
I have worth.
Well, I think any kid that comes from that situation, everybody's got core trauma. You know,
Totally.
it's funny. For the last decade, on Tuesday mornings, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I go downtown and I work in a homeless shelter. I've done it every Tuesday for a decade. And what you learn is when you start to learn people's stories, almost every one of these people that are on the street had bad trauma when they were young. Something bad happened to them. They were either physically or sexually abused or abandoned, or something bad happened to them, and they couldn't deal with the pain of that, so they started numbing either with alcohol or drugs. And when you do that, you're not employable, you're not dependable, and so you don't work, and then you take from your family until they've had enough, and then that's how you end up on the street. So if you can ever help these people get back to that core trauma and figure out what that was, and to make them realize, you know what, but you are worthy and you are loved, and you can give people, you can restore them, you can give them their life back.
I 100% believe in that. I believe in that for everybody, even for a friend that's going through shit,
Yes.
An ex, or even your dad or your mom that you might have issues with. Realize they had core trauma too.
Well, my dad left when I was young, but when my dad was 5 years old, it's like the old joke. When he was 5, his dad went out for a pack of cigarettes and never came back. They found him 20 years later living in another state with another family. So it gives me the ability to have grace with my dad and go, man, I wish you'd have stayed for me, but I understand because you had trauma when you were young.
Right.
And so, so when you have grace with people, if you just understand, hey, everybody's going through something. Just have grace with it. Take a breath, and and you know this, Jenny. But right now, people are so opposed. They don't listen. We just scream at each other. And yet, I think if politically you took both sides of the equation and said, let's sit down and just talk, I bet we would agree on 85% of the stuff. So we have a hell of a lot more in common than we have different. We just don't talk. We just yell at each other. And nothing happens.
We talk, we don't listen.
We don't listen. You're exactly right. And I think, to be a good partner, to be a good parent, to be a good part of your community, you got to listen to people. 100%. And that's what I did. The first guy I ever met in the homeless shelter, he was 21 years old. And my first thought, if I'm going to be honest, is I'm like, you lazy ass, go get a job. You're 21 years old. And I sat down and I started having lunch with him. I'm like, what's your story? He said, well, it was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. He said, when I was 11, my mom killed herself. He said, the next year, my brother killed himself. It was me and my dad, and my second year of college, my dad killed himself.
Oh, my God.
He said, I just got to where I couldn't hurt anymore, so I started smoking crack. And I'm sitting there across from him and going, hell, I would have started smoking crack too.
Me too.
Anybody would have. And so all of a sudden, instead of being judgmental about this guy, once you learn the story, you go, oh, hell, I totally get it. Now, the cool thing is he's been sober for 9 years, and he graduated from college. He got his nursing degree.
Oh, my God. There's a good story.
It's a great story, yeah.
Oh, see, I know. I really do. There's a bunch of memes out there that people make fun of like, don't judge someone until you walk in their shoes. But it's so true. It's really true. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a core trauma. And I love that word that I'm just going to stick with me, which is grace.
Grace, yeah.
If you have grace. It's such a beautiful word. Jeff Foxworthy, you give me the chills. I'm telling you, a lot of people are listening to this interview, and I can feel it. They're going, I just fell in love with him even more than I already did.
I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. So
no, but it was really it was a meaningful conversation with you today, and I'm really grateful that you came in. Maybe I needed you today, Jeff.
Maybe so. But, it kind of works out that way, doesn't it?
It does. It does. I needed a little Jeff Foxworthy in my life. I'm going to go pick up the game, Relative Insanity. Where do they find it, by the way?
It's on Amazon. It just hit Walmart's this week. And so, and it will make you laugh. And I feel like, you're a family person. So when you have your family together, if you're laughing, that's like the best memories and the best time you can spend with your family.
100%. We need more of it. So thank you so much. I'm going to go pick it up today. Relative Insanity. Do the same, you guys, on Amazon and at Walmart. Jeff Foxworthy. Come back anytime. You get a friend in me.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. Great to see you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.